The heavy scent of rain and white lilies filled the grand glass conservatory of the Sterling estate. Kira stood perfectly still in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, her fingers tracing the delicate lace edge of her bridal veil. In her hand, she held a small silver antique locket, her only link to her past. Today was supposed to be the day everything changed. After months of intense scrutiny from high society and the bitter opposition of the elite, she and Liam were finally standing on the edge of their happily ever after. The vast gardens outside were illuminated by thousands of fairy lights, and the soft hum of a harp orchestra drifted through the air, creating an atmosphere of pure magic. Everything was absolutely flawless. Through the glass partition, Kira could see Liam. He looked incredibly striking in his midnight blue velvet tuxedo, adjustments being made to his boutonniere by his father. He was smiling, a genuine, rare smile that completely softened his usually cold, aristocratic features. His eyes kept darting toward the aisle, waiting for her appearance. He looked so at peace, so completely safe. "The guests are all seated, darling," her maid of honor whispered softly, checking her watch. "It's time." "I am ready," Kira murmured, taking a slow, deep breath to steady her racing heart. The heavy mahogany doors of the conservatory swung open. The music transitioned into a breathtaking custom arrangement. As Kira walked down the long, mirrored aisle, the reflections of the crystal chandeliers danced around her like fallen stars. Her eyes locked onto Liam's, and the anxious murmurs of the crowd seemed to quiet down naturally. There was no fear here, no hidden danger. Just an absolute, unspoken devotion. Liam stepped forward, meeting her halfway. His hand was warm and steady as it enveloped her cold, trembling fingers. They stepped up to the altar together, facing the officiant. "Do you, Liam, take Kira to be your lawfully wedded wife, to honor and protect her above all others?" "I do," Liam said, his deep voice resonant, echoing through the silent, breathless hall with total conviction. The officiant turned to her with a warm smile. "And do you, Kira?" Suddenly, the tranquil atmosphere shattered. From the winding driveway of the estate, the sharp, rhythmic wail of police sirens ripped through the night air. The music stopped instantly, a jarring note hanging in the silence. The guests shifted in their seats, confusion turning to alarm as headlights flashed brutally against the glass walls. Liam's grip tightened on her hand, his protective instincts overriding his shock. The heavy glass doors didn't just open. They were forcefully pushed open by state authorities. A team of federal investigators marched into the sacred space, their dark uniforms and heavy boots creating a terrifying contrast against the pristine white floral arrangements. The lead investigator stepped forward, pulling a gold badge from his coat. His eyes locked directly on the bride. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Liam demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low growl as he stepped directly in front of Kira, completely shielding her from their view. "This is a private estate. Get out!" The investigator remained entirely unmoved. He held up a red-stamped document. "Kira Vance," the man announced, his tone flat, piercing the absolute silence of the room. "You are under arrest for high-level financial fraud, corporate sabotage, and the illicit draining of the Meridian Group's offshore reserve accounts." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The shock was absolute. "No," Kira whispered, the color draining from her lips as she looked at the steel handcuffs. "This is a mistake. I've never even heard of those accounts." The dream of a perfect future had turned into an absolute nightmare in a matter of seconds. Guests stood up from their decorated chairs, some backing away in horror, others pulling out their phones to record the devastating scene. The cameras that were meant to capture their happiest memories were now flashing brutally, capturing Kira's public humiliation. "Step away from the bride, Mr. Sterling," the investigator ordered, his hand resting firmly on his holster. "I won't let you touch her," Liam shouted, his face flushed with rage and desperation. He grabbed the investigator's arm, his voice shaking with raw fury. "She is innocent. Do you hear me? Who authorized this? Who did this to her?" "We have a signed warrant from the federal prosecutor," the officer replied coldly, stepping past Liam. "The evidence against her is absolute. Move aside, or you will be charged with obstructing justice." Two officers grabbed Liam, pulling him back by force. He struggled against them, his knuckles turning white, his eyes wide with helpless agony. "Liam, please help me," Kira cried out as an officer roughly grabbed her wrists. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked shut around her delicate lace sleeves, a brutal contrast against the pure white fabric of her wedding dress. The guests watched in absolute silence as the beautiful bride was pushed down the aisle she had just walked so proudly. Her veil tore against a flower arrangement, falling to the floor like a discarded shroud. "Don't say a word, Kira," Liam yelled, his voice cracking under the emotional weight. "Don't tell them anything. I will find out who did this. I will get you out. I swear it." Kira looked back at him one last time as they dragged her through the grand entrance. Her eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her pale cheeks, ruining her wedding makeup. The police car doors slammed shut with a heavy, final thud. Inside the abandoned ballroom, the silence was suffocating. The family members were weeping, and the corporate rivals who had attended the wedding were already smiling maliciously, whispering about the immediate collapse of the Sterling Empire. Liam stood alone at the altar. He looked down at the torn veil resting on the steps. His chest heaved as he took a sharp, jagged breath. The look of profound shock on his face slowly dissolved, replaced by something terrifyingly sharp, cold, and driven by pure vengeance. He pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket, dialing his chief security officer. "Lock down the building," Liam commanded, his voice dropping to a harsh, venomous whisper. "Nobody leaves this venue. Someone in this room set her up, and I am going to find out who it was." The news of the wedding day arrest spread through the city like a devastating plague. Within hours, every major media outlet was broadcasting footage of Kira being dragged away in her wedding dress. The rumors were vicious, tearing her reputation to pieces. The public, who had once viewed her as a sweet, innocent girl from a humble background who found love with a billionaire, now saw her as a calculating criminal. They accused her of using Liam to infiltrate the company and steal its darkest secrets for the highest bidder. Inside the cold, sterile walls of the police interrogation room, the air was thick with despair. Kira sat under the harsh fluorescent lights, her wedding dress looking completely out of place against the gray concrete. "I don't know anything about those offshore accounts," she repeated for the 100th time, her voice barely a whisper, her hands shivering in the freezing air. "I've never even seen those financial codes before." "Then why were they found on your personal laptop, Kira?" the detective asked, leaning across the metal table, his eyes drilling into her. "The IP address matches your home. The digital signatures are yours. Your family's debts were paid off from that exact account last night. How do you explain that?" Kira shook her head, burying her face in her hands. "I can't. I don't know. Someone must have hacked me. Please. You have to believe me." Meanwhile, Liam was living in his own private hell. He had locked himself inside his corporate study, the air thick with tension. Papers were scattered across the massive desk, and a specialized cybersecurity team was reviewing every server log from the past 6 months. Liam stood by the panoramic window, his back rigid, his hands clenched into fists. "How did this data get leaked?" he demanded, turning around slowly to face his team, his dark eyes pools of absolute fury. Only a handful of people on the board of directors had access to these specific files. "We are running a full background check on everyone, Mr. Sterling," his head of security replied nervously. "But the digital paper trail, it points directly to Kira. Whoever framed her did an incredibly thorough job. It looks foolproof." "Nothing is foolproof," Liam snapped, his voice dropping to a dangerous low growl as he slammed his fist onto the marble desk. "Kira doesn't even know how to bypass our network firewalls. She spends her time managing our charity foundations. Look deeper. Check the board members who opposed our merger." At that exact moment, the study door pushed open without a knock. Liam's head snapped up, his jaw tightening as he saw who had entered. It was Arthur Pendleton, his chief rival on the board of directors, and a man known for his ruthless corporate sabotage. Arthur smiled, but his eyes were completely dead, glittering with malicious satisfaction. "Ah, Liam, I see you are still working hard despite the tragic events of this morning," Arthur said, his tone dripping with mock sympathy as he casually walked into the room. "The board is in open revolt, you know. The stock is in a terrifying tailspin because of your little bride." "Get out of my office, Arthur," Liam said, his voice deadly calm, though his muscles were tense, ready to strike. "Oh, I don't think I will," Arthur chuckled, setting a leather folder down on the desk. "The board has just called an emergency meeting. They are going to vote you out as CEO tomorrow morning. They cannot have a man whose wife is a federal criminal running the largest holding group in the city. You are finished, Liam." Liam walked over, standing inches away from his rival, his tall figure casting a long, intimidating shadow over the older man. "Did you do this?" Liam whispered, his voice laced with venom. "Did you plant those files on her laptop to get to me?" Arthur's smile didn't fade. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "It doesn't matter what I did, Liam. What matters is what the judge believes. And right now, your precious Kira is going to prison for a very, very long time. Unless, of course, You resign tonight and hand over your majority shares to me. Liam felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. The trap was perfectly set. They weren't just trying to destroy Kira. They were using her as a weapon to steal his entire life's work. I will never give you my company, Liam muttered through his teeth. Then watch her burn, Arthur replied coldly, turning around and walking out of the study, leaving Liam alone in the dim light. The heavy mahogany door closed with a deep, final thud. Liam stood perfectly still for a moment. He took a slow, deep breath, forcing his panic to dissolve into cold, calculated focus. He looked down at the cyber team. We have less than 12 hours before the board meeting, Liam announced, his voice resonant and powerful. We need to find the real source of that digital signature. Every lonely piece of data, every hidden file, find it. We are going to destroy Arthur Pendleton, and we are bringing my wife home. The night passed in a quiet, heavy calm before the storm. While Kira sat shivering in her cell, staring at the concrete floor in her ruined wedding dress, Liam didn't sleep for a single second. He was tracking a ghost. At 4 a.m, his lead technician gasped, staring at a flashing line of code on the monitor. Mr. Sterling, look at this. The digital signature on Kira's laptop. It wasn't uploaded from her home network. It was routed through a proxy server located inside the Pendleton estate. Liam leaned over the screen, his eyes narrowing. Can you prove it in court? Yes. If we extract the original encryption keys from Arthur's private server, the case against Kira will completely collapse. Then we're going to get those keys right now, Liam said, his voice flat and unreadable. The next morning, the grand conference room of Meridian Group was packed. The air was electric with anticipation. The board members sat like statues, waiting for the execution of Liam's career. Arthur Pendleton sat at the head of the table, grinning like a king who had already won the war. The doors opened. Liam walked in, his suit immaculate, his expression a mask of stoic defiance. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 2 federal agents and an elite legal team. Liam, Arthur corrected himself with a mock laugh. Glad you could make it to your own funeral. Shall we take the vote to remove you? Before you do that, Arthur, Liam said calmly, taking his seat at the opposite end of the table. Perhaps the board would like to see the real evidence of corporate espionage. Liam snapped his fingers. His security chief connected a laptop to the main projector. Suddenly, Arthur's private server logs appeared on the massive screen, showing the exact date, time, and IP address used to frame Kira. What is the meaning of this? Arthur shouted, his face turning pale as he stood up, his voice cracking with sudden horror. This is a fabrication. A lie. This is the truth, Arthur, Liam said, his voice booming through the silent room, absolutely dominant. You used a micro camera embedded in a gift delivered to our bridal suite to copy Kira's digital credentials. You framed an innocent woman to orchestrate a hostile takeover. And the federal authorities have already raided your estate to seize the primary server. The surrounding board members gasped softly, looking at Arthur with complete disdain. The tables had turned in a single second. Arthur collapsed back into his leather chair, his world spinning around him. The federal agents stepped forward, their heavy boots clicking against the floor just as they had done at the wedding yesterday. But this time, the handcuffs were for Arthur Pendleton. Arthur Pendleton, you are under arrest for corporate fraud, illegal wiretapping, and framing a federal witness, the agent announced, pulling the crying man from his seat. Liam didn't even watch them drag Arthur out. He didn't care about the company anymore. He didn't care about the stock market. He turned around and literally ran out of the building, his heart pounding against his chest. He threw himself into the back of his car. To the central precinct. Now! He ordered the driver. An hour later, the heavy metal doors of the police station opened. Kira stood there, wrapped in a dark woolen coat over her torn wedding dress. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from weeping, her spirit completely broken by the horror of the last 24 hours. She looked up and saw Liam standing by the car, his tuxedo rumpled, his hair messy, but his eyes filled with the most profound, beautiful love she had ever seen. She didn't care about the press photographers who were still lingering around. She ran down the concrete steps, throwing herself into his arms. "Liam!" she gasped against his chest, her hands shaking violently. "I was so scared. I thought I lost everything." Liam held her so tightly, desperately, like a drowning man who had finally found the shore. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands, his own tears mixing with hers. "I told you I wouldn't let go, Kira," he murmured softly against her ear, his voice thick with raw emotion. "Every shadow that chased us, it's gone now. I found the truth. You are safe. We are safe." He stepped back gently, looking down at her beautiful, tired face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small velvet box that had survived the chaos of the wedding day. He opened it, revealing the glittering diamond ring. "We didn't get to finish our vows yesterday," Liam whispered, his voice clear and perfectly modulated in the quiet courtyard. "So let's finish them right here. No grand ballroom, no fake society. Just you and me. Do you, Kira, take me to be your husband?" Rumi smiled through her tears, her heart finally feeling free, completely unguarded. "I do, Liam. 1,000 times I do." He slid the ring onto her finger, and as he pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss, the whole world around them finally went quiet. The light had stayed, and so had they.